you and I are going to go through battles even when we think we're going to go through a happy time in our life or what's going to be a monumental experience in our life. We can find ourselves right there in a battle. In fact, I'm reminded of 11 years ago today, we were setting up for what was going to be an incredible, joyful time for our family because Joseph was on his way as those labor pains were coming. Not for me, of course, but I was coaching along and supporting Cast. And so as we went to the hospital, we were getting ready. We notified family, and Jen had a very healthy pregnancy for 9 months, and it came time for Joseph to be born, but he wasn't going to come out the way that he needed to come out. He came out sunny side up, and some of you know the story. He took in an incredible amount of fluid, and so much so that we almost lost him right there in the delivery room. And so, in that moment of, here's this joyous occasion that you couldn't wait to happen, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the battle of all battles. And I'll never forget Jen reaching over to me is because we went from this nice little quiet room with one doctor and one nurse, me and my Snickers bars. Then I wasn't eating too healthy back then in 2008. And all of a sudden we got moved to this operating room, and seemed like every doctor in the hospital was in there. And all of a sudden it was so noisy. And then he was coming out and he took in all this fluid and there was no outcry. And our hearts began to sink. And Jen said, she grabbed my hand and she said, pray. And I have to be perfectly honest with you. In that moment, I wasn't depending on any of my degrees. I wasn't depending on any classes I took, if there are such a thing for prayer. I wasn't depending on my race or my economic background or anything like that. I found myself actually weak in the knees like a boxer in the 12th round, ready to collapse. But I felt the overwhelming presence of God in that operating room. And I felt that it was God who was directing our prayers. It was the Spirit, as it says in Romans 8:26 and 27, that there is obviously times we know that we just can't pray, but it's the Spirit of God that moves us. And we prayed right there, and after that there was an outcry, and Joseph spit up all this fluid. They whisked him away to the NIC unit. And I'll never forget, after being there in the operating room, I said, I want to see my son. I went to see him. And so every time his birthday falls on a Sunday, I promise God, or even during the week in the devotion, that I would honor God because he certainly answered our prayers. And so I'm so thankful that today Joseph is 11 years of age, happy and healthy.